And we are done. Hello there, it's Keith Hayden, the digital novelist, and welcome to what will probably be the final episode of 2024 of this podcast. Today I'm going to talk about the post-publishing process, as I just completed mine for my latest novel, the supernatural horror novel, Gates of Okinawa. And I want to talk about some of the surprises. Some of them are nasty surprises that I found and were waiting for me after I pumped my fist and popped champagne and sprayed it all over the room. I'm just kidding. I didn't do that. But yeah, after I celebrated that I was done, it turns out I wasn't really done. And there was a lot more work to do. So I'm going to talk about what some of those things entailed and hopefully provide some insights that will help you if you're at this phase of the novel production process. As usual, you can find more information about Gates of Okinawa, my latest novel, over on my website, keithhayden.net, and we'll find a link somewhere around this podcast, this recording, this video, whatever it is, online. So I want to jump right into this. And I think one of the problems that makes this post-publishing process, I'm gonna have to stop saying all those P's, all that stuff, just tripping over my words here. But I think one of the things that makes it a difficult thing is that it's one of these processes that you just don't do a lot, and then by the time you get to this phase of the novel writing process, you're already so cooked. You've survived the writing process, you survived the editing process. Maybe you've even done a little marketing for your book, or you've done a launch party. Maybe you've done a little tour if you have some money. And all of that stuff is taxing. I mean, it's a lot. And then you hit publish and people are praising you and they even start reading. And then finally you get your hands on a copy of the book and you're like, oh shit. What the fuck? I thought I caught this. I thought I caught that. I thought I saw that. I thought I fixed that. And then it turns out there's a lot of stuff wrong. So yeah, it's just one of those things that doesn't come around very often. So I think the first thing that happens is we kind of let our guard down and thinking we're done, when there's, if you want to go through this process and you don't just want to put up a PDF online or something like that, or put out just a whatever print book, and you want it to look professional, you want it to be good as it possibly can, then this is the process you're going to have to go through. And I find the first part that's really annoying about this part is that you just have to wait for the print book. And it took me maybe 2 or 3 weeks after, I think I just got the print book last week, so maybe it took 2 weeks, a little over 2 weeks, to get my hands on the first copies of Gates of Okinawa. And that's enough time for, the things that kind of fall away. You've been looking at the document so much for the past X months, years, and you're just sick of seeing it. But you're at that point to where you've kind of forgotten what it is. And it's kind of a good thing, because you can kind of go with somewhat fresh eyes into looking at it and look at it more objectively. But that makes it harder because you don't really remember which parts maybe needed a little work, which parts where you were just, kind of rushing or whatever, it's a lot of stuff. I mean, Gates of Okinawa is 120K words. And I'm not even writing like epic fantasy. If you're writing epic fantasy or some Brandon Sanderson shit or something like that, first of all, good for you. Second of all, God help you. Because your editing process must take forever. And the more words you have, the more chances you have to fuck up and get them wrong. So, yeah, you just have to wait until you can get your hands on it. So in this episode, I'm going to go through the 3 different formats that I put out my latest novel in and talk about some of the things that I've been doing for the past 2 weeks. This the unsexy part of being a serious professional novelist. Now let's talk about the ebook first. The ebook is typically the easiest to assess because, you can get feedback right away. All you need to do is buy your book or send it to your Kindle or whatever, and there you have it. You can kind of see what it is. And for me, the ebook is frustrating because you have to deal with the Kindle interface, and I'm really focusing on Amazon because, of course, that's just the main thing that a lot of people use to read books. And it can just be very difficult to format and get it right because the technical stuff can be difficult. If you're using something like Microsoft Word or another program, whenever you put it into KDP, you upload it to publish, it does some type of weird bloop, 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 something on the back side. I don't know what it's doing, but then it just comes out screwed up. And then my dumbass had to go and make custom images for version 2 of Gates of Okinawa. So adding images is another complexity that you have to deal with. And it really screws up the flow of the document, and headers, footers get screwed up, page numbers. Oh my God, I probably spent several hours with page numbers yesterday. But let me give you a pro tip when it comes to this. There's a software called Kindle Create, which you can access through Amazon KDP. But Kindle Create, I just used it for the first time yesterday, and it was great because you can essentially see exactly the preview of your book, but you can edit the preview. And so this is very, very beneficial because it allows you to make those last minute adjustments to your document, which will directly translate to Kindle because you're doing it in their proprietary, I think it's KPF, it's a KPF file that it creates. It's not a doc or a PDF. So it plays perfectly with Kindle, and I did that yesterday for my book, and my book looked a lot better for it. So if you are publishing with Amazon, which you probably are, at least you're publishing there if anywhere else, then get this program and add it to your post-publishing process because it's going to help you out a lot. All right, so let's talk about the print book. This is one of those things that you can't really make an assessment until you get a copy or proof of the book in your hands. Yes, every tool has a cover preview or approximation where they show you where the trim lines are, where the bleed edges are, but no. Don't trust any of that shit. I'm telling you from a lot of experience doing a good amount of print books that there's always something weird about the cover. Maybe you thought it was centered, but the way it was cut wasn't so good. The spine was too thick or it was too thin. The cover image bleeds over to the spine. Or in my case, with Gates of Okinawa, you're just an idiot and you forget to put your name on the spine. When I was in school, I remember I had a teacher, I had several teachers actually, that if you forgot to put your name on your homework or your test or whatever, they just wouldn't grade it. And I always thought this policy was really harsh when I was a kid because I was like, oh, it's just a simple mistake. You forgot your name and who cares? Just put a grade on it and ask later. And some teachers would do that, but I ran across several teachers who would absolutely not touch it. Then fast forward to the future, I became a teacher. And while I didn't have an absolutely no name, no grade policy, I understood why those teachers refused to grade no name papers, because how are you it was just impossible to determine the scrawl, whose scrawl this is, and got to play this guessing game. I have dozens, over 100 of students, and I'm not going to play that game. Anyway, yeah, so I forgot to put my name on the cover, So these are things that stand out loud and clear when you have the proof in front of you. And then that leads me to formatting and the interior of the book. And this is one of those things that you spend so much time in your editor, whatever you're using, whether you're using Word, whether you're using Google Docs or another specialized program, that you get used to seeing the font at a certain size. And even after you formatted it, it's hard to tell what it's going to look like in a book when you're looking at even a PDF or some other fixed format, like it's not in Google Docs or in Word. You've got it pretty much locked in. It's really hard to tell. And I know that I had this with Gates of Okinawa. I'm getting a little older now, so I'm zooming in a lot more on my Word document. So yeah, I didn't really think about the size of the paragraph gaps, and I finally get the hard copy and I'm like, why is it so many damn pages? Like, it's not an epic fantasy novel. And it's because I had forgotten to adjust the paragraph spacing. It was still pretty wide, and as a result, the book was much longer than it cost more to print. And yeah, it was just longer than it needed to be as far as lengthwise, because it was a lot of space. So those are the types of things you're going to want to look for when you're thumbing through your book. And of course, obvious screw-ups too. Like, I had some type of weird anomaly where by one of the chapter titles, it was a line. It looked like one of the formatting things had bled over to the actual manuscript, and it was just weird. These are these weird anomalies that I wrote down this next that you need to look out for. Page numbers, headers, footers, these are notorious places where small errors are really, really hard to catch. It's like a needle in a haystack when you're going through the print version again. And when I added those chapter images to the second release of the book, I had to deal with section numbers and all these other technical things to make it look good. So a piece of advice I have here is that there are a lot of editors that will kind of take care of this for you. And I know one in particular that I have used a couple of times. It's called Atticus. Atticus is pretty good just because you don't have to fool with any of this stuff that I'm talking about. It just kind of gives you templates, and you can customize within the templates, and it's really easy. But beware, because Atticus, just like every text editor, has its own code embedded, and it doesn't play nicely with Google Docs and Microsoft Word when you're copying and pasting in. And so you may just find yourself creating much more work for yourself. When it comes to reformatting, it might undo italics, it might mess up your spacing, and in my case, if you're using languages other than English, it might just erase them altogether. And that's one of the reasons why I could not use Atticus, because it was going to force me to basically retype the Japanese in my novel. And there's a lot of Japanese. I mean, it's not a ton of Japanese, but there's enough to where it would have been a significant amount of work to go back through and redo the Japanese in there. So I was like, nope, I'm going to go back to Word, and I'm going to just make it work, do what I have to do. That's when it comes to the paperback. That's basically the process. It can be a lot of work going back, and I still, even with Gates of Okinawa, I have not gone back and read the entire paperback again with that kind of editor's eye, just because I've been doing all these other things. But if you want the absolute best that your novel can be in print form, then you should take, at least thumb through it and look for obvious things that stand out, because the readers will, of course, see those things as well. The last thing I want to talk about is the audiobook. And the audiobook, I didn't really make many changes to it. And the audiobook's like 15 hours long, so I have not gone back and listened to my most recent audiobook. But I will say a couple of things about the publishing process. The first thing is that it can just take a long time to get your audiobook approved. I think it's still one of those places where, more so than even publishing an ebook, that it's still, I don't know, it seems like it just takes them longer to go. I don't know if they're just getting a lot of audiobooks in or if they're doing a lot of quality control, but it took a little over 2.5 weeks for the Gates of Okinawa audiobook to show up, and I submitted it on the day that I finished the entire manuscript. So at the same time. So I told this to somebody on Substack. If you want your audiobook to release at the same time as your ebook and print book, then you've really got to get it in probably like a half a month, at least 2 weeks before you submit the final manuscript. At least with ACX, just because it just takes that long. It can take that long to get it up and going. Then the other place you can post your audiobook is on a place called Findaway Voices. Findaway Voices is also it's run by Spotify. Excuse me. They run that, so if you want to get your audiobook on Spotify, and Spotify is slowly becoming more of a place for audiobooks. I've noticed them making that push in the last year or two. And then, of course, it also pushes out to a ton of other audiobook distribution platforms. Then you're gonna have to upload it there. And the tricky thing about audiobooks, especially with ACX, is that there is a pretty heavy technical burden as far as how they want, and it gets really technical as far as numbers. You have to look it up, and it can be a real hassle to make sure that your files are meeting the technical requirements for ACX. Findaway Voices isn't as strict, but I mean, and it's debatable too. I'm listening to an Audible audiobook right now, and I don't think it sounds that much better than a podcast. Like, I feel like most podcasts sound better than audiobooks, even though they have this huge technical burden. So I'm not sure what the deal with that is, but yeah, just make sure that you have all of your files ready. You have your intro and your outro and a retail sample. I mean, it is what it is with audiobooks. They just can take a lot of effort to produce. This latest novel had 82 chapters and an epilogue. I mean, that's 83 files, plus 2 for the opening and the closing, and plus 1 more for the retail sample. That's 86 files. And yeah, it's not very fun to post those and put those up. So if you're thinking, I know audiobook isn't for everybody, but it is another way to get your story out there and put it in another format. I think it's a great format. If you're interested in wanting to produce an audiobook, then hit me up and I'd be happy to help you talk about how to set one up. That's going to do it for this episode of the Digital Novelist Podcast. This is 2024, the end of a very wild writing year for me, and 6 books out, 6 print books done, and a ton of writing online. This was a landmark year for writing for me. I hope it was for you as well. And 2025, in my mind, has already begun. I'm already well on my way to helping other people put their stories out and ideating on my next story idea. It's going to be great. Also in 2025, I want to help you write a novel in next year. It can totally be done. You can do it if you're the type of person who's been wanting to do this, but it's always seemed a little too intimidating. If you've already kind of done it, but you felt like you never had what it took to actually put it out and publish, I'm going to be documenting my process for putting together my next novel, my third novel, which will be called Sirius and Limnic Escape from Okinawa. It's going to be a prequel to my first novel. So unlike last time where I wasn't really focused as much on the process, I was more focused on speed. This time I'm going to go slow, and I'm going to do my best to document what I'm doing along the way. I'm not really sure how I'm going to share this yet. I still haven't thought through all of that, but I know I want to make this available to you if you are interested in putting a novel together next year in 2025. So I'm really excited about this. I hope you are too. And I'll see you in the next episode of the podcast. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.